And good afternoon. Welcome to Torn in Two for this April 16th, 2021, for your show for news and information and much, much more. Hi, I'm your host, Gregory T. Roberts, as always. And I want to thank you guys for participating and watching the show. You can watch the show if you are driving and you have a lot of questions. Please feel free to watch it on WVS 103.7 Facebook page and M106. As you know, some of you are hearing us live as we speak on the radio. I want to thank you, listeners. We got some really heavy stuff to talk to you about today. And let me give you the weather. The weather today is currently 44 degrees. This afternoon, you can expect a high of 46. Tonight, low of 35. Saturday, high of 46. And Sunday, high of 51, low of 39. So we're partly cloudy today. That same kind of forecast will be out the weekend and going into Monday. Now, the title of this show is There's an Elephant in the Room. And matter of fact, there are several elephants in the room. It's a metaphor. It means that there's a big problem in the room and we need to address that elephant instead of looking around that elephant. This week has been a tremendously hard week for a lot of people, and it just got a lot harder. The closing arguments of Derek Chauvin trial, and now the closing argument in the George Floyd case is Monday. In Chicago, they released a body cam shooting of a 13-year-old of Adam Toledo. And we're going to be talking about that more. But if you don't know, last night, another tragic shooting in Indianapolis, that would be the second one this year. 8 reported dead, including the alleged shooter, plus other people shot. The press conference, the mayor said something to that struck me, that we can no longer just have hearts that we just say it's just, oh, well, that's the way it is. We can no longer just say those things happen. We can't do that. We have to do something. We have to be that light on a hill. And too many times we have too many people still divided. And I speak about that division all the time. But with that said, you know what? I need some heavy hitters on this. And I got some guys coming in. Of course, I have he's my assistant, and he's coming in and to serve 2 roles today, Pastor Melvin Burns, but he's also served as a city manager. And so, Pastor Burns, would you come on in? How you doing, sir?
I'm good, brother. How are you this afternoon?
Good. I'm going to need you to wear 2 hats today, maybe 5.
Well, I think my head's big enough for both, and I hope my heart can handle both today too. But it's been a tough week. It's been a challenging week. I'm hoping that in our conversation today, we can at least, as we have a dialogue, put some new thoughts out there, maybe help people kind of generate some of the nervous energy, some of the anxiety, some of the anger they're feeling. And
Right.
we can do that today.
Right. I've spent this week talking to so many people from all over the country, to try to get them through this, and I'm sure that you've done it as well. Yes. Also bringing him into the mix is a guy that I envy and I've looked up to. I grew up and he lived around the corner. He's a minister, and he's so much more. Louis Churchill, come on in the studio. How
Uh,
you doing, sir?
Good afternoon. How you gentlemen doing?
Good, good. I thank you so much. And I don't know, is Cedric reported yet? Um, yes, there's Cedric Scott. How you doing?
Excellent. Excellent. How's it going?
Um, uh, First, I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves, Cedric and Louis, and your credentials and why we have you here. Louis, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm Louis Churchwell, former CEO of West Michigan Therapy Incorporated, past and currently a master's level clinician with Health West. I hold master's degrees in professional license counseling, as well as a master's degree in addiction studies. And it has been a tough week this week, Pastor Burns, and it's a lot going on. And I look forward to the dialogue that's going to take place.
Okay. How about you, Mr. Scott?
Yeah, I'm a limited licensed psychologist. I'm also the owner of a counseling center here called Lazarus Man Consulting in Muskegon Heights. Worked in this capacity 10 years, West Michigan Therapy, where Louis Churchwell was the CEO. Cut my teeth there in addictions, counseling, substance use treatment, and 12 years, Hackley Community Care Center, behavioral health manager, where I integrated behavioral health into primary care center with medical doctors and that sort of thing, as well as integrated some substance use disorder counseling there as well. So I've done this more than 26 years in terms of counseling and psychology. Currently now, a standalone community counseling center here with Lazarus Man. Looking forward to talking to you all today.
Before I go on, I think all of us have worked for Louis at one point in time.
Yeah.
Guys, there's an elephant in the room. Matter of fact, there are many elephants in the room. We're going to attack one today. We're going to attack the shooting in Minneapolis, and we're gonna some of the things you're gonna like and some things you're gonna hate. But the one thing that you're gonna get is the truth. This started with April 11th, 2021. Dante Demetrius Wright, 20-year-old African American male, was fatally shot by Kimberly Ann Potter during a traffic stop. An attempt to stop him, instead of using her taser, it was reported that she used her gun. If you look at the body cam, it clearly shows that happened. She grabbed a gun and she used it. Guys, it's a tough such situation, but it's another person dead. And as we talk about that, then we have the 13-year-old Adam, which as we get more information, the body cam on that stuff is just crazy. And I'm sure we're going to get more information on the deadly shooting in Indianapolis, but let's concentrate on Minneapolis today. Guys, where do we start? Where do we start?
Let me ask a question of Brother Churchwell and Brother Scott while they're here. For people here in Muskegon, where we say, well, we haven't had these events here. Is it reasonable that these shootings we've seen, that how are people here? How is it affecting people here in Muskegon? How are people in our communities internalizing these events?
That'd be for you, Mr. Churchwell.
Well, I think anytime you have the type of situations and the circumstances surrounding the situation that happen, it impacts not only Muskegon, but it impacts the country, as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
In Muskegon, per se, there hasn't been any type of those particular shootings or mass shootings. But in our distant past, there has been incidents where individuals were detained by police officers and died, shortly following afterwards.
Mhm.
We're not far removed from those type of situations. We do have to be very vigilant, and we have to understand that these type of things that happen, brings a fear into normal people across America.
Mhm.
There's people in Muskegon as a result of this who are raising young men who are terrified, and they have that talk with them on what to do when you go out in the community or a police officer stops you. Those type of fears are real, and
Mhm.
they're bringing into our community a level of emotional and mental baggage that other races don't necessarily feel to the degree that we're affected by it.
Mhm. Uh, Cedric, you want to address some of that?
Sure. I'd like to take a little further back in terms of why, in fact, we should be concerned in Muskegon because of the overarching consideration as to what is the cause of these incidents. Let's just take one dynamic that we'll address in terms of stereotyping. The police and society has stereotyped African American men, especially our young men, to such a high degree that they're dangerous, that they're to be treated differently, that they are to be marginalized, undervalued, less expectations. And so that creates a mindset or a perception of how one should be treated. So when they are encountering, I don't care if they're a Muskegon cop, Washington, D.C. cop, L.A. cop, if that stereotype is international or national and all of the authorities view them that way, there is a potential for the outcomes of what we're seeing week after week, day after day, in terms of uh, overzealous individuals
Mhm.
shooting our young men, shooting black men. And
Mhm.
so the elephant in the room, we should chalk on the side of that elephant stereotyping.
Mhm.
Chalk on the side of that elephant marginalizing. Side of that elephant under expectations,
Mhm.
less than. These stereotypes that have been cultivated over centuries and how to treat black people. The
Mhm.
black code. We can go far back in our history and we can find all the elements that have brought us to this point. Now,
Right.
I like to start there because you have to find some center point as to where we're going to talk about that issue and then how we're going to address that issue. What must we do? Because we can talk about it today and it'll make for a good show for you. But
Mhm.
if we don't address some of these key elements as to what's causing this, then we won't find a resolution. And clearly, Robert, you know me, I always want to find a resolution.
And exactly, that's what we want to do. So let's break down the situation. He was pulled over because his plates had expired. Uh, well, first of all, the DMV and the Secretary of State. I'm currently trying to transfer a title. My appointment to get that done is in July. And all over because of COVID, um, police officers have been told not to pull people over minor um, actions, but yet they felt compelled that this guy needed to be pulled over. Number two, when he was pulled over, and Cedric, I want to address this to you because you were also a police officer as well. Um, when he was pulled over, instead of they realized that he had a warrant and the car was left on, I don't know what took him so long to handcuff him. The guy panicked. He got back in the car, and then, in all short of words, all hell broke loose. Cedric, I want to address to you what are sort of proper things that should have been done.
Oh, that videotape will definitely be used in some of the academies for training purposes. First off, when he was removed from the vehicle, when he had him out, that individual was brought to the rear of that truck, that vehicle. That door is closed. That vehicle's turned off. And if my partner's with me, of course, he did that. He took care of that for me. He turned that car off, and them keys were on top of that car.
Right.
So that car wasn't going anywhere anymore. That individual was on the back of that car, leaned on that car, imbalanced, so that he can't just take off, snatch away. Those are protocols that you're trained in first year academy. You're just a rookie and you know these things. Not only that, let's go back to why I stopped him. You just mentioned that we know we're in COVID. Was he swerving? Was he was he reckless, disregard in his driving mannerism? Or what are the other suspicions or probable causes for stopping him? We got to know those things. And after I stopped him, am I clarifying my commands to him as to why I'm stopping him? So those things, there's always going to be probable cause for that. Whether the word is not to arrest these people for these license plates or not, cops are going to use that because they know that they most of these traffic stops are used for accessing weapons off of people. And of course, he also had a warrant. So getting people to be held accountable for their warrants. Now, I'm from a different police department, DPD, and that was a misdemeanor warrant. And so, just off the record, if you will, he ain't going to the precinct for a mystery award. And that passenger, he had another person over there that could drive. They're driving. He's not driving. But that vehicle is just too big.
Yeah.
I don't know how big that city is and how they address those things, but there was a number of different ways that can be dealt with in a different way. And even if, let's say he did run away, I know I have that boy's ID right there. I know that I'm going to see him again. He's not wanted for murder, arson, some heinous crimes. I know where to find him. And that girl, he had someone else in the car with him too. So I can identify them again another time. As a matter of fact, I can just follow him right now. And sooner or later, he's going to stop.
Right.
So there's other ways that could have been dealt with.
And by the way, Officer Potter was an experienced officer of 26 years experience. And if you look at this particular incident, I'm just going to put it out there because I know somebody is saying this. Well, if he just would have just did what they said, none of this would have happened.
Let's go back to marginalizing, undervaluing, under expectations. How we stereotype this individual is how why we're treating him that way. Now, they also put out a video showing another Caucasian individual that was stopped who took a property or items off of a cop and beat him up with it.
Or how about the one that they drugged the officer and the guy? Oh, people have he had a rifle, and just we see that over and over again, and people wonder why we are tired. And then the other statistic that a lot of people bring up is, well, that that there are more Caucasian people shot than African Americans.
Okay, well, that may be so, but statistically non-founded because of the population that we're talking about. We got 200 million Caucasians and we got 30 million African Americans, and we're being shot and murdered at one person less than that population. Fortunately, does that make sense? So that argument is common among those individuals, again, who are trying to marginalize and underestimate that our population, as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't hold water. So
Louis, go ahead, finish it. Drew.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, go for it.
Louis, what do you think?
I think everything Cedric said, he's hitting it hitting the nail right on the head. I think one of the things that we're dealing with here, there's two words that come into my mind, and that's the word fear and the word hate. A lot of these individuals are hiding behind the word fear, that they're fearful. But in reality, it's their hate that's driving them to do a lot of these things. We need to get at the bottom of this and get resolutions. But first, we need to be aware of what we've come up against and what we're dealing with.
Right.
We've been hated as a people for no ungodly reason for more than 400 years, and it continues today. These type of things are not old. We're very marginalized. These type of things have been going on for years. Right now, we have a lot of things that are at our disposal that's bringing them to the forefront, which can be good. And then it's something that's also very challenging. That's the social media. The media right now is bringing these things to all of us, and we're able to see this. Whereas before, we didn't have access to see and understand all of the things that were going on. Now they're coming right to us, up close and personal. You know, what this does for us, it makes us aware of just how much we are hated and just how much they're using, that they're fearful to get away with hating us. And under the name of hate, they're destroying and killing us. It's not just the police force, but we also have that in other professions. You see, education doesn't eradicate racism and hate. We have doctors that are destroying our people, millions at a time, you know, under the name of that profession. What we have to do is start coming together, helping our people come together, and putting us in positions to where we can do more for our own selves and help each other out. That's something that we've been talking about as a people for years, but yet we have yet to find a way to come and do that. At this point in time, you know, we don't have no other choice. We have to do it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's continue with the video. He shot, like I said, the officer, 26 years experience. Okay, I'll use me. I worked in the fire department. I remember my first big fire as a pumper, responsible getting the water to the truck. The water to the person at the door. And I made a simple mistake, and my officer caught me and said, "You forgot one thing." Okay. Accidents happen, but if you look at this particular thing, if you look at the body cam, there is a difference between a yellow light taser and a black heavy Glock. Anybody? Am I correct?
Wow.
So she had time enough to have that gun and then go, wait a minute, this is heavier. Wait a minute, this is not right. I reached in the wrong, put it back, grab the taser, because you're supposed to say taser, taser, taser. That's to let the officers know that you're about to use taser. And then they're supposed to get back and you're supposed to use the taser. Am I right so far, Cedric?
You're absolutely right. And that training, your training in those areas in terms of deadly force and tasers and things of that, defensive tactics, that is after 26 years, just as common as you eating with your right or dominant hand. Those things are rehearsed so often on the police department. It is second nature. Now, fear, Lewis talked about, may have led her to be reckless. Nevertheless, if she was fearful to that extent that she's reckless, that is not a characteristic that is something that can be used in law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
You're constantly at fear for your life. I got guys, friends of mine, still on the police department. I was inundated with phone calls, and they were all going, "Are you seeing this? We never could this happen, you know?" And it's correct. We're not trained that way. You're not trained to reach for your gun off the bat. That's not the first thing you do. Now, when you make a traffic stop, you may very well have your weapon out behind you,
Mm-hmm.
concealed, ready to use. But if you're asking that individual out and you can visually see he has no weapon, your weapon is no longer removed from your holster.
Mm-hmm.
You're at that point escorting that individual out, securing them in a safe position, and you may still be fearful. However, you still do your duty, your job. Fear is not an excuse for recklessness,
Mhm.
incompetence. Fear is not accepted in that capacity. Now I
Yeah.
said it, it's on tape, and
Right.
I'll stand by it.
Yeah.
Mike Anthony Smith said, "Homeboy, Kurt Bogany took the municipality position, not a black man's position." Michael Anthony Smith also said, "True statement by Lewis and Darwin." We're going to get to you as well. Comments are coming in and so fast. That's great that you guys are in the conversation. Let's take it to the press conference and afterwards. And that's just when I want to get to you, Pastor Melvin Burns. There was immediate anger, and they wanted the police officer fired immediately. That press conference, in the best words I can say, it was a debacle. And let's go through the process. What happens when someone shoots somebody and what is supposed to happen? Go ahead, Pastor.
Well, from again, I know Kurt Bargain and talked to him many years when I was in the profession. There's so many elements to this. First of all, and I know things are happening fast, but you'd like for him and the mayor to be on the same page when they step up to the mic at the police conference. I mean, at the conference, if they weren't, certainly I would defer to the mayor. And my next thought would have been, man, no comment works sometimes. But in this instance, when when you don't know, things are happening fast and you don't know, you really can't speculate. I know some people, you want an immediate firing, but you can say this is exactly what we saw. And I'm talking from an administrator standpoint, but you don't know what else to call other than everybody sees what you see and describing the event you see. I think about some of the subjects that, it could very well be a mistake. But when you look in terms of liability, there's two issues you look at. One is frequency and the other is severity. And so, like you were talking about the mistake you made on the pumper, might have been a mistake, but the severity wasn't that high. Employees make mistakes every day. And so we have this thing called, municipal liability. So people make mistakes often. Then there's the severity of a mistake. And you can make a mistake so big one time that it requires determination. It requires some more immediate drastic action. And it means that people are going to lose their lives. And so any incident, looking at the frequency and the severity of how it happens. And this is, of course, on the severity scale, this is about as high as it gets. Again, there's a lot of dynamics, and I saw that commented about the manager's response, but you're trying to manage a lot of things at one time, and I think he probably made some comments I'm sure he probably want to take back at this point in time. But again, I'm sure you're thinking not just the event happening, but the job of protecting the city interests, no matter what your personal thoughts are toward this police officer and what you've just seen on this tape. And so I'm sure all those things you're trying to process, in the midst of people, Michael, not local, but nationally, asking you questions about this event. So I read it, when these incidents happen, I run through what I might have said and not said, and it's not to just second guess people completely, but you can just imagine how quickly things like this are transpiring, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. One of the things I have learned from my experience is when you don't know, nobody can make you comment on something you don't have information about. And I've certainly learned from my experience to not, when I don't know, even no matter how bad it looks, is waiting till you get some more information sometimes.
Well, the point is that now, if you look what happened after the press conference, the council removed the city manager. He was fired. The chief of police, during the press conference, after he spoke, left out of the press conference and had to come back. He was let go. And the police officer who did this turned in her resignation, and the mayor said that he would not accept that resignation. This question goes out to Mr. Churchill. You've had to hire a lot of people, but you had to let go of people. And this is going on to Mr. Scott as well. But how do we explain to people that there's a process that has to be done, or if that process was not done with that particular police officer, she could get her job back?
You know, there's a thing that they use. They call it due process. And when you talk about due process is primarily comprised of what policies and procedures are all about. And when you look at certain situations and circumstances, particular one in this instance with Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright was not a very large, intrusive, or domineering figure.
No.
He was a boy. He was a kid. And it doesn't take rocket science to know that if you got 3 police officers dealing with a child that's unarmed and don't have anything, that level of severe force isn't needed. And when you go back to the factual things that were said earlier, under the law that we currently have in place for police officers not to stop anyone under this COVID mandate for those minor traffic offenses and all of these things, when you put all those things together, and then it comes out to the traffic stop that was made, I don't think no due process was even factored into place. Mm-hmm. So it shouldn't be a issue of in terms of her being fired. It should be the question as to what extent, to the letter of the law, that we're going to prosecute her. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think this whole thing got jumbled and muddled from.
Okay, how about you, Cedric?
Well, what Lewis says is true and clear. There is a due process. I would suspect the reason why that mayor doesn't want to accept her resignation is that due process, as well as if she resigns, she may be allowed to receive her pension. Mm-hmm. If she doesn't resign and she's terminated, part of the due process may be allow them to take her pension away as part of that consequence for that errant behavior. Everyone knows that police work is one of those jobs where you're damned if you do, damned if you don't, oftentimes. That is why your training mechanisms kick in for the most part with these minor incidents. When Lucy's saying he's a small man, after you ascertain whether or not there was weapons, especially firearm or anything of that nature, at that point then a weapon, your firearm, your weapon is no longer needed. There's other matters of dealing with that situation. If he doesn't want to get out that car, you can't shoot him and drag him out. Everyone knows that. So you're training, you've got training on how to extract that individual from that vehicle with marginal injury to him and yourself. Those things come into play. We have to keep in mind, these are professionals. When you work a police car, you are considered a professional law enforcement officer. You have training from a neuter to the tutor. You know what you're supposed to do under these circumstances. And they cover this in your 16-week academy training, and you're placed with a veteran officer, and you go through this rigmarole constantly. So let's not marginalize the expectations for her. She's 26 years in the job. She is a senior officer on that scene, I assure you.
And she was a trainer as well.
Yes. So, I think you make a good point, which is, and Lewis too, like the responsibility gets shifted to Mr. Wright and what he should do. And all the responsibility is on the officer. All the responsibility on how you handle that scene, how you deal with that person. From the time you stop him, you're responsible for that man's life. From the time you stop him, everything that happens to him, you're responsible for. And so the blame shifting, what he had once for all those things, the officer's the one responsible. It really dictates how this thing goes. So many things you said earlier, it's like people, I read comments, again, how this thing works on Monday morning when I hear this incident, when I'm talking to the police chief, all those things people say is, why are we stopping people? I've seen people come to police interviews, not just in the communities I've been in, who've had outstanding warrants. And they've said, hey, you can't come and interview now, go take care of this. Some kind of ticket or something, they got back in college or something they didn't ever take care of. That's not common. A lot of people walking around don't know they have warrants. So, again, not just on a regular day, but on a COVID situation, Why are we stopping people for misdemeanor warrants? I've seen officers, hey, you need to go take care of this. That's not uncommon.
Mhm.
Happens all the
And
time.
actually, Pastor Burns, um, he was initially stopped for the plates. They didn't know about the warrant
Until
until they
right.
ran his ID. And when they found out that it was as Cedric said, it was a very minor thing that happened, but
Mhm.
yet it did. But it doesn't merit, or does it ever merit somebody losing their life?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely.
The
No.
impediments associated with what he was being stopped for takes care of themselves. You can't get your license renewed. You got a warrant. You can't get insurance for your vehicle. You have a warrant. There's impediments right there for him progressing further and clearing things up for that issue alone. So then you need to allow him the opportunity to go and clear that up at another time. What was the urgency of grabbing this guy and dragging him out of the vehicle for these misdemeanor charges? So, in my opinion, there's no urgency associated with a misdemeanor. That's just
And if you look at the tape, he came out of the car willingly.
right.
And the thing is like you said, if the process would have been followed, first of all, why wasn't the car turned off? Why was he still by the door? Um, People say, well, if he would have complied, well, the thing is that when you're dealing with a place that has a history of shooting people, you would be a little scared too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so
Okay,
had he run away, you find him another day because you placed him in the back of the vehicle. He doesn't get to take the vehicle with him. He runs away. You either pursue him, catch him, or you don't. But he runs away and you find him another day because now you have the vehicle, his ID, you have all the things you need. Just like the Walter Scott issue. You remember that call in South Carolina? He
mhm.
got his ID. The man runs away, and that officer shoots him. Ultimately, after a hung jury, he was found guilty after federal charges. But
Mhm.
all those things are looming into this equation
Right.
because of so many. Now you have the video proof of these incidents that's happening. But before, what you and I were brought up on, we all were aware of grandma and grandpa and them going down south and having to not stop for gas or food because
In
the
certain
county
spots,
sheriff's going to put a case on them. All
right?
right.
I think it's very important, and I want to hear your guys' opinion on this. Is that all this stuff that is happening is not a fluke? It's been happening for years, but
Yes.
because of technology, telephones, and all that kind of stuff, and body cams, it's catching this stuff. But it's been happening for years.
Yes. And so one of the ways of eradicating it has to be accountability. Like what Mr. Barnes said, it has to be accountability. This guy was caught. She was seen on video shooting this individual. Okay, you're just gonna give her manslaughter. You can't prove homicide. Well, give it to her, and she gets the full extent of that law, just as you and I would get when we make a mistake. It
Okay,
has to be equal justice under the law. Everyone has to be treated fairly and equal. That's
all
my
right. Lewis and Cedric, I need you guys to speak to people because now we're down at the bottom of the hour and the show is going really fast. I'm home. I'm mad. I've had to talk to my daughter in California. Her husband's upset. He's work. He has 2 masters in your field, and I've had to talk to so many people, and they're angry. They don't know what to do, but they want to do something. Or and if you look at in Minneapolis that they've been out there on the streets every day, you have people that loot and steal and burn. That ain't necessarily a good thing.
no.
But yeah, I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I'm sitting in this chair, and I told my wife it's going to be a hard day. What do we tell people? How do we work out of these situations, Mr. Churchwell?
You know, that's a, a very, very a good question. And most people, who approach this situation find themselves in a very precarious situation when it comes to that. For years, the answers to what am I supposed to do and what should I do have been hanging over a lot of them here. As an average citizen, the things that you got control of to do is to formulate your opinion, stand on it, take it to the legislators that you are associated with, and push that agenda with them.
Mm-hmm.
We have to start using our voice, using those people, black or white, that we put in a position of authority and power over our lives from the governmental perspective. We have to hold them accountable to make sure that every letter of the law is used and used correctly. So we need to go out and make our voices heard from the political aspect. Politically is how we're going to push this envelope. Right now, individually, we can protest and do a lot of the things that we're doing, but until we get the political vehicle involved, a lot of the things that are happening are going to go on happening. Cedric made a very profound statement a while ago. I don't know if a lot of people caught it, but accountability is where this thing is going to make the rubber meet the road.
Mm-hmm.
Until these people start being held accountable, until these people start getting the just due that they need, they're going to continue to utilize the excuse of fear, making them do it while they're inciting and driving fear in us, that's making us act the opposite way to give them the ammunition they need to do what they say they do to get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to always say, I was fearful of. Well, how can you say you were fearful of a 20-year-old kid who had nothing, who wasn't hardly more than 105 pounds with 2 bricks in his pocket soaking wet, and a girlfriend in the car? How can you make that sound like this was a threat that he needed to be shot? He needed to be tased, let alone shot. It didn't never happen.
Not an acceptable criteria or dynamic for incompetence or what some call a mistake. Fear on that job is not acceptable. You are trained. You still have to perform your duty 100%. Mr. Burns said, too many lives are being held in your hands for you to be fearful and drop the ball. You cannot. And it's not acceptable for you, or it's not a defense that you should be found not guilty or exonerated because I was fearful, afraid. Then you are not supposed to be an officer. That if fear debilitates your ability to perform your duty 100%, then you are incapable of performing your job as a police officer. That's a fact.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, let's talk about the person that's home right now, the kid that's home that's frightened, don't even want to drive. So many of our men, a lot of us don't even seek counseling, but we need counseling, but we don't seek counseling. But here's a way for us to address them right now. And if anybody that's listening and you're just got so much pent up anger that you don't know what to do, how does Mr. Churchill and Mr. Scott, what should they do? People that are home and they throw their hands up.
Well, right now, it shouldn't be no mystery that the nation of young African Americans, as well as their parents, are traumatized by the recent change of events, have been traumatized for a long time. We have a nation of individuals and people that have established things like post-traumatic stress disorder because of these sort of things that are happening and have them so traumatized that they're afraid. And there's a lot of people that are reacting to this. Yeah, some of them to the point to where they may need counseling, but for the most part, those individuals and their parents should know that we have to do the things that we talked about earlier. We got to get out and be proactive instead of reactive. We got to go out and solicit solutions instead of just sitting back. So if someone is traumatized to the point to where they stop to exist and they stop doing things, then yeah, they probably should seek out some type of counseling to get beyond that bump or that hiccup in the road. You know, I would strongly recommend that.
Mr. Scott.
What Lewis is referring to when he says stop doing the thing that they usually do is part of a criteria for PTSD. Witnessing an event that's traumatic, that's part of the criteria as well. So they may very well benefit from a counseling experience. The proactive thing Lewis is talking about, that's part of the treatment process, this whole process. We've all witnessed this traumatic event. So, and we're feeling helpless and hopeless because what do? We don't know what to do. We're sitting here on our hands. Well, there is some options, the political aspect of it. There is some, and all politics is local. I'll say that again. All politics is local.
Mm-hmm.
We start home first. We start with our local politicians. And then we download the app, 5 Calls app, where we make calls to our national legislators. But all politics are local. We have no alternative, no choice that we're going to move forward except to play the political game, except to start demanding accountability from our politicians, from our law enforcement, and not accepting the results that we're receiving today. It's just it's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned that we have to move as a people in that direction. We all have to move in that direction, at least a great percentage of us, in order for us to change our circumstances in our community here in Muskegon as well as abroad.
Pastor Burns, you've been in many meetings, council meetings and stuff like that. How important is it for people to get to council meetings to express their feelings on not only controversial issues, but everyday issues that might happen in the city?
As important as it is to have a driver behind the wheel of a car, it's that important. We elect people, but they need to hear from us. And I like what Cedric said. It's local. And not to pick on anybody, but every week or twice a month, people are passing local ordinances. We want to get tough on this and tough on this. And what I know, this is out of my own experience. Every time you pass another local ordinance, whether it's throwing trash on the ground or it's people that clean up the yards, when you write somebody a misdemeanor ticket for that, understand that has a potential to turn into a criminal issue in the court.
Mm-hmm.
Is how many things do you want to criminalize? And so we have to, from a policy, this is real, and real issues I have to say from a policy, but we got to start thinking, what's the long-term impacts of some of these things that we're doing? Nobody likes trash. Nobody likes really, yards not being cleaned up. You may not like people not driving around with license on their tags, but we got to think, what are these things really doing in this climate that we're in now? And one of the things I'm really conscious of is how many more issues do we need to have when we're creating interactions with our police department when we don't need them? I'm not saying the whole decriminalized police thing, but there are times we have to think about when we pass these policies, what situation are we putting our citizens in? We see it in our community, but what's the climate that we're creating? And so those are the things that they need to hear from citizens about, and good policymakers need to be thinking through every time they want to enact a policy. How does it affect this entire community in light of, again, the situations we're under now? We did all these things with COVID, but we're seeing a situation where in our community, our young Black men, they're affected. None of us are okay. And so to think that somehow it's sitting here in Muskegon or Muskegon Heights that the smallest of policy doesn't affect those things, it's all part of the same. It's all part of the same picture.
Here's a question for everyone. How important is it because I work and I know a lot of police officers that are great people. They're involved in the community. They live in the community. They want to change the community for the good. They go to work every day to strive to make their city, their county, their country better. But how important is it for them to govern each other when they have somebody that's a bad apple, which you hear that term all the time, which I'm getting tired of that term, bad apple. How important is that they start governing themselves and start checking each other? Cedric?
I tell you what, the shift I was involved in, my time in Detroit, that was handled internally. Uh, your partners, people on your shift, first dealt with you, and then they serve you up to internal affairs. So they had a department that's designed just as you get promoted for making an arrest in the street, internal affairs get promoted for arresting that jerk sitting next to you in a scout car who's doing all these ill-gotten things,
Mm-hmm.
God-forsaken things. So you get served up that way. Now you hear the code of blue silence, that sort of thing. That's some of that. When you're put it this way, if you're doing something with the right intentions and things kind of went a little left, there was a blue. I'm just going to be honest. There was a little code of blue code, but you still caught it from your ship.
Right.
That was corrected.
Mm-hmm.
And you may even, if you have a sergeant, lieutenants, they will deal with you as well. You caught it from your shift. But you weren't allowed to run rampant over people's lives on that police department. Contrary to popular belief, Detroit so this, so that. That was not what I observed my time there. You were held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
But there was just the process of going about doing that.
Right. I tell you, many times in the fire department, I was held accountable and butt chewed out by the bat chief or my lieutenant a lot of times because much given, much required. The job was too important, and if you made a mistake, somebody could lose their life, and you had to accept that responsibility of that role. And if you messed up, you got checked. How important is that, Mr. Churchwell, that happens?
Well, I think for the most part, when Dr. King said to stand by idly and do nothing while violence is taking place, you're more guilty of it than the persons that are actually committing the actual violence. There's a lot of things pertaining to this that come up. They talk about gang activity and how gangs stick together and they do different things. Well, when you stand by someone when they're doing wrong or malicious stuff, you're just as guilty as they are if you don't step up and say something about it. So you have to stand on your own and you have to do what's right. And that's another accountability issue that was alluded to earlier until other officers in the fraternal order of police establish that they're not going to idly stand by and allow this sort of thing to happen. It's going to continue to happen to some degree. At some point in time, we got to stop giving up the right for the wrong.
I want to say this. How important is it that I know you, Mr. Scott, I know you, Mr. Churchwell, I know you, Pastor Burns, I know you guys are involved, very involved in the community. Your bios are extensive. You guys are trying to help men and young women out there. And you guys have been doing that for years. How important is it for us to get off our lazy boys and start being talking to not talking at, but talking to and being with our younger people or people that need to know maybe we don't need to hit some of the trees that you hit. How important is it that we get involved and get off that lazy boy?
Well, I have a new established treatment center that provide mentoring services for the community. That's how serious I believe it to be. And part of this whole mission here is to make myself available for girls and boys clubs, the pathfinders, the things that are local here, being able to provide life skills counseling, substance abuse counseling, as well as other hobbies, trades, and skills that may help them to feel better about themselves and feel more part of our society and as a whole. It is imperative that we as progressive professionals in this town are made available and visible to those individuals so that they can see that it's being done. That is one of my biggest pet peeves that I've been hammering for quite some time now, and I get in a lot of trouble about this, is when I look around the community and there's no CEOs that look like these individual kids we're talking about. There's no directors of this or owners of that they can look at and say to themselves, well, you know what? I'm going to be what Mr. Churchill is. He owns his business over there, and he tells me that this and that can happen. So I'm going to be like Mr. Barnes. He owns, and he's a pastor, and this and that. We don't have the exposure of those individuals in our community at the great extent that we should have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my main things. You don't want to get me started on that today. We need a whole nother episode for that.
Well, we're going to do another episode, Mr. Churchwell.
Yep. Well, I think I agree with those pet peeves that Mr. Scott is talking about. But I think to all of us, it is goes without saying, it's necessary. It's a God-given responsibility that we reach out and give back and help reach a hand up instead of a handout for some of the individuals, that are out there. And everybody that we come in contact with or come across our path, they should know what we're about and what our intentions are. And every adult male that's African-American should feel the same way. If they don't and they're having problems with that, I would welcome them to call me and have a conversation with me.
Mm-hmm. Pastor Burns.
Again, I would just echo what this gentleman said. I know for both of them, they have professions, but it's their life. I'm only Showtime pastor for a few hours on Sunday, but start with my family. Anybody that's willing to listen, I'll talk, I'll share experiences. It's just a lifetime commitment of trying to make things better. I don't know how many more years I got here, but I'm willing to share any and everything I know. I'll talk. I've been up late nights. I've cried with, prayed with, argued with, trying to make the situation better, man. And sometimes the thought was that when people in the community want things better, I don't want to say they call the wrong people. They don't always call people who want to honestly share their experiences.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain things you want to say and not say. I think I'm fortunate. I'm at the point in my life now, I don't have to do that kind of monitoring. Everybody has an income, has to work, be accountable, but I can tell the truth. I can speak the truth, and I can speak in a way where I believe it can be heard. It doesn't mean I have the only truth, but I can share my experiences. Hopefully, I've learned to be a communicator at this point in my life. And if I'm asked to do that, I'll do that without hesitation. And honestly, Sarah, how I see things or the experiences I've had, and I'm hoping that it helps make a difference, in whatever sphere of influence God allows me the rest of my life.
Well, guys, I want to thank you so much. We're at the end of the show. Mr. Scott, how can people get to you if they need to talk?
There's a couple of ways. You can go onto my webpage, lazarusman.com, all lowercase, lazarusman.com, or you can contact me at 231-740-2401. That's my business line. And we're located at 2416 Peck Street, right there, smack in the heart of the city. So it's easily located, easily find. And I look forward to hearing from them. We're all working together in this big problem that we have here in our community.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Churchill.
My direct office number is 231-724-4540. It'll get you right through to me. Cell phone number is 231-769-8638.
Pastor Burns.
Well, if you walk down Muskegon Heights, our church is located right next to City Hall at 2640 Peck Street. You can catch me here in my office at 2731 Peck. You can reach me anytime at 231-903-7728 or 231-737-4673.
Guys, I want to thank you so much for being on Turning Tube this week. We will be having this a discussion again. I guarantee you. I want to end with this. Stop being reactive, be proactive, get involved now, because I can guarantee you something like this is going to happen again. And we got to stop staying back and watching the TV and being upset. You take care. Have a great weekend. God bless. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
On behalf of everyone in our community and in healthcare,